Jonathan,
Yeah.
digging that mustache.
Oh yeah.
That's quite the mustache you got there. Are you going to start growing the handlebars?
Yeah, it's almost there. It's almost
Oh,
curled.
oh, yeah, yeah. There they go. There they go. Yeah, cool. Well, until then, let's talk about tech history.
This week we're covering November 8th through the 14th. First up, we have he put the X in X-rays.
Are you sure he put the X in X-rays? Because it sounds like he created the blowout hairdo back in 1895.
Nice hairdo, German professor Wilhelm Rontigen. What?
Rontgen, Rontgen, Wilhelm Rontgen.
Oh yeah, he's German. There you go.
Yeah, so this guy stumbled on some discharges that electrical tubes would put out, and he was basically just called them unknown. What did he call it? He called them unknown rays, and he just referred to them as X rays. And to this day, they still refer to it as X-rays. Essentially, yeah, refer to X-rays, unknown form of radiation. It's an unknown form of radiation. And so this is what X-rays are all about. When they do an X-ray of any body part, they're basically blasting you with radiation that gets captured by lead sheets. And these lead sheets are then translated into a form of a picture. That's why you only get them in black and white. So the radiation goes through. They only shoot you with a small amount because otherwise it's just going to just destroy your arm, right, or your body part. So they spray you with just a small amount, and all the black that ends up on the paper, or I know, you know what, it might be the other way around. I think all the white ends up on the lead sheet, so that when they go and turn it into an image, all the white gets inversed, and all the black that didn't make it through because of your bone structure or whatever, they reverse it, and your bone ends up white. So it's kind of like film, right? The same thing
Yeah.
with pictures when you expose it on photo paper. So that's what they end up doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Look at that beard though, man. That beard's something else.
Yeah. He had style in 1895.
Oh yeah. Yes, he did. Probably a heartbreaker.
November 9th, a Firefox rises out of the ashes.
Man, good old Firefox. This
Wow.
guy is Firefox. So Firefox was originally created to compete against like the major browsers that were out there based on operating systems, right? So if you had a Mac, you had Safari. If you had a Windows machine, you had Internet Explorer. But since Netscape Communicator wasn't able to be sold, there wasn't any money in that, since everybody was giving away their browsers. What they did is they just put the source code out there. The Mozilla project, which was originally Netscape, they just went ahead and put it out there. They just, okay, hey, here's the source code. We're not going to make any money off of it. There's no reason to keep it secret. And Mozilla Foundation was created, and they created the Firefox web browser. And it's the same exact code that Netscape Communicator had, or Netscape itself. There is one that shows up in Linux operating system. So if you install Ubuntu, or if you install some of the other releases, you used to get, I don't know if you still do, I think now you just get Firefox, but you used to get a browser called Phoenix, which was essentially Firefox, but they just called it Phoenix.
Cool. So interesting to see the history of Internet Explorers.
Oh, yeah.
Next up, we have November 10th. Microsoft introduces Windows. Wow, that is a
Yeah.
super old design. That is cool.
I kind of like that nostalgic. I think it actually looks pretty clean.
Yeah, it looks like a construction, like they do Windows.
Yeah. Microsoft Windows. We create soft windows for your home. Yeah. So yeah, Windows 1 didn't make it very far. I mean, for one, they were almost no, they were almost a year late, if not more than a year. More than a year late because Bill Gates promised Windows to ship April of 1984. That was the year that I started high school. Actually, I was graduating junior high. They called it junior high back then. It wasn't called middle school. But it didn't release until November of 1985. So that was the winter of the year after. And Windows version 1 and 2, they didn't really quite make it out there very well. You know, they kind of had some limited use. But when Windows 3 was released, that's when just like everyone just kind of accepted Windows 3. And Windows 3 was still just a PC, a standalone PC. You could play games, you can install applications and run it, but you couldn't connect anywhere. And it wasn't until version 3.1 that you were able to connect with other machines through the network, through Ethernet. And but I don't know. I don't think Windows 3.1 was around for the internet just yet. I think it was, well, no, Windows 3.1 was around for the internet. It was because Windows 95 came out in 1995 and the internet came out 2 years before that. So yeah, it was around for the internet. You can browse the internet with Windows 3.1.
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of cool.
All right. Next up, November 10th, the day the music was reborn.
The day the music was reborn. Look at that.
This is the first iPod.
This is version 1.0, huh?
This is, yeah, they didn't even have like, this one still had buttons. The ones I used didn't have buttons.
Yeah. It was a pretty nice. Didn't your brother have one of these?
No, he had the one with no buttons,
Oh, interesting.
I think. Or maybe he did. This thing,
Yeah, I kind of remember his being kind of bulky.
yeah, it was like a brick.
Not sure it's a nice paperweight these days. They weren't cheap either. I remember he spent a good portion of his savings on that one. I think that's one thing about your brother. He's always been into hardware.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, this is they brought this out because people just wanted access to their music. They didn't want to deal with the radio anymore. Radio is just filled with ads. And society nowadays, they're tired of commercials. You know, they're like, no, I just want to listen to music. You know, I don't want to listen to ads. I don't want to listen to a DJ talking. It's like, I want to hear my music. Mm-hmm. And so when iPod came out and their whole enforcing of like, hey, you know, you can't just share your music anymore past your iPod. Like your iPod is yours, your music is yours, you pay for it, and that's as far as it goes. You know, you can't do anything else with it. That's where people were looking for something simplistic, something easy to work with, and just be able to hear their music. And so iPod, that's why iPod just became a hit.
Yeah. All right. Next up, November 11th, Ethernet is born.
Ethernet?
Ether.
I wonder why they call it Ethernet.
Yeah. Cable tree ether.
So, as invented by Robert Metcalfe and David Boggs, the Ethernet network functions for the first time. From its humble beginnings in the research project at Xerox PARC, Ethernet has developed into the de facto standard for business and home networking. That is super true. You know, the cables used for this are very similar to the telephone cables. the ones that you would connect to the back of a telephone. Remember the old telephones?
Yeah.
Those jacks are called RJ11. When they created the Ethernet, they started using the RJ45. Instead of just using 4 cables, it actually uses 8 cables, but only 3 pairs of 2. Is it 3 pairs of? No, only 2 are used, and the other ones are intertwined, which help carry the signal through the cable itself. And there's a certain sequence that they go into. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the sequence is kind of like it's weird the way the connection sequence is, but only 4 of them are used for communication. 2 of them are used to talk, and 2 of them are used to listen. And so if you ever have them connected backwards, it's like both cables are just talking and both cables are listening, and you never get any communication. So you actually have to like transpose them in order to get the communication right.
Weird.
Yeah, this is and now, I mean, they started with like old versions, and I think in 1990s they came up with what they call category 5, and then category 5E enhanced, which stands for enhanced. I think now they're like up into like 7 or 8E or something. It's crazy. I mean, there's like the communication has just become much better, and less loss of data by using those cables.
Nice. Yeah, that's how we have the internet as we have today.
That's right. Just all copper.
All right, next up, we have November 12th, conception of the World Wide Web.
I feel like we've had this guy before.
Tim Berners, yeah.
TBL. That's a 1970s electrostatic globe. It doesn't shock you, but your fingers, as you touch the glass, it attracts the electrostatic towards you. Yeah, Tim Berners-Lee's been all over the creation of the World Wide Web. And essentially, if you consider what the World Wide Web is, right? I mean, you have the communication portion, but it seems like the communication portion was already there. The World Wide Web, to me, I think, is like the commercialized version of accessing the web.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though people were able to communicate over the web, they didn't call it the web because it's not like you can type in an address. It was a little different. It operated quite differently. But what he did is he put together the concept of a browser and a web server that can communicate together. And if you add more web servers, then that one browser can go from one web server to another. And they can do it through links, or you type in the address directly and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy that put the specs together for HTML, which is the data that gets displayed on your browser. And then one of his workers, he was a manager, and one of his workers came up with CSS, which is the style behind the data. And then a few years later, we came up with JavaScript, which is the interaction with the user. But interestingly enough, if we kind of like go another degree further, his experiment of putting a browser and a web server together all happened on the next computer, which was the computer that Steve Jobs created when he got booted out of Apple. You remember that story?
It all ties together.
It all ties together somehow. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next up, we have November 12th. Microsoft declares tablets are the future.
They do recommend a lot of things, and they sometimes flop. But other companies find a way to make it successful. And I think this is one of those cases where they try to put the Windows operating system on a tablet, but because all Windows users are used to keyboard and mouse, it was kind of difficult for them to introduce the Windows operating system on a tablet. They're still trying to do it. Remember the Surface Pro?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tablet, but it still came with the keyboard and mouse, you know. But you get companies like what's that one company that creates the phones? Not Toshiba, Samsung.
Mm-hmm.
Samsung took the phone and said, okay, well, let's create a tablet out of it, you know, and it's already, you know, touch and drag, and you know, you point at the screen and whatnot. So it wasn't far-fetched for an Android user to go and grab a tablet and have the same functionality just without the phone. The same thing was with the iPhone, right? The iPhone, it was all touch, tap, drag type of thing. Mm-hmm. So it was very similar. You can turn that into a tablet. But I just don't think that people were ready for a PC on a tablet. It wasn't there.
No, I still don't feel like it's there because like they don't have as much power as like a regular PC sometimes too.
Yeah. The hybrid interface of a Windows operating system on a tablet. Great concept. They definitely predicted the future on tablets, but just not with Windows.
All right, next up, we have November 13th, first underwater telegraph cable.
1851.
Whoa.
Man, look at them sideburns. And he's got the comb over, huh?
Yeah.
I thought that was a recent style of, you know, these modern older men that were trying to keep their hair, but no, apparently it's since 1851 that's been going on. So this was laid out by the British telegraph engineer John Watkins Brett and his brother Jacob Brett. They sent underwater telegraph cables and opened it for business. Oh, wait a second. I was about to say like, hey, these guys are the guys that bankrupt the Pony Express, but this is underwater. So I'm thinking that this is overseas, and the Pony Express doesn't go overseas. But this was on the English Channel, London to Paris.
Cool.
So, I mean, how did the Pony Express get around there? I mean, it had to be a version of the Pony Express in England.
Yeah.
Europe. So.
All right, next up, we have November 14th, Mariner 9 orbits Mars, first spacecraft to orbit another planet.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, what's interesting about all these missions is that they're all so math, how do you call it? Like the intensity of the math that they use in order to get these things out there.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, it's crazy that, you know, all the math that goes into this.
And all the time and effort to design it and like put what's on it.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't know anything about spacecraft, so I can't say much about it. Moving on.
Next off, we have November 14th, Intel bugs out.
Oh, the good old Pentium chip.
Pentium processor.
Yeah, this was the predecessor to the iCore 3, the iCore 5, and the iCore 7, and recently the iCore 9.
Oh, yeah.
So if you had an Intel chip in there, it was the way to go. But yeah, so the thing is that the processor themselves have software built in as well. And so if the software has a bug, it can be exploited. And so the Intel chips themselves would leak out data that then other programs can access if the chip wasn't protecting the data. So this was an F0 bug, a very specific invalid operation passed to the affected processor would cause the processor to lock up, causing the computer and any software running on it to freeze, identified as the Intel invalid operand of lock compared exchange 8-byte. Oh man, instruction erratum.
Whoa,
Yeah, this could definitely cause some serious problems.
that does sound like a problem.
Yeah, Matt. Oh, well, that explains it. This is why our machines would lock up all the time. We always blamed it on Windows. Cool.
All right, next up we have, oh, this is the last one. November 14th, Microsoft introduces Zoom.
Man,
Wow,
what a way to end this segment of the podcast.
I remember Zoom.
There's a joke on there. Ready?
Yeah.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Microsoft Zoom.
Microsoft Zoom who?
Exactly. Hey, we didn't come up with the joke. We're just reading it right off the screen, you know. So this was the competition to the iPod, yeah. And this was supposed to be the iPod killer.
Instead, it was dead before it even tried to kill the iPod.
Yeah. I don't even think they announced that they were stopping production. They just stopped even talking about it. They swept it under the rug, you know. I wonder if anybody still has a Zoom.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they came out with the Zune too late, because that was when, like, I think iPod was on like the 4th or 5th iPod kind of thing.
Yeah, this was 5 years later, wasn't it? Let me see. Yeah. The day that music was reborn. This was 2001. That was November 10th, 2001. And this was November 14. Almost 5 years. Exactly. Almost to the T, 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So 5 years later, and only lasted it came out 5 years after iPod, and it killed itself in 5 years. Yeah, this was a huge flop. Who had a Zoom? Did I have a Zoom?
I feel like you had a Zoom.
Yeah, I was a big Microsoft advocate at the time, because I gotta admit, man, like, you know, all the toys you guys had and all the toys that I had when you guys were growing up, they were all bought with money earned through Microsoft programming. You know, so I was programming the Microsoft platform. So I was like, yeah, why not support what they had? I had the little Microsoft phone, which was running Windows on it. I don't know if you ever remember. It was like this thick, like a good inch thick. And it was like maybe that big, and it would flip, and it had a keyboard and stuff. And so, yeah, I think I ended up getting the Microsoft Zoom. I don't even know where it's at anymore. I think I donated it or something. They donated a lot of stuff. Yeah, but essentially it's just donated it. There wasn't anything valuable on it. And so yeah, it died a slow death. Cool.
That's all we have for tech history this week.
Excellent. Until next time.
Later.
Peace out.